Anti-Magic Academy 35th Test Platoon is a 2015 Silver Link light novel adaptation, the stylings of which almost all of us are very aware of. It runs through the standard harem high school action and rom-com elements, and by all accounts sets itself up to be a wholly unremarkable and forgettable experience. True to form, the community in general seems to have treated it in exactly that fashion. However, I'd like to preface that 35 is actually quite the strong showing for what it attempts to achieve. Its arcs break from the standard 3 to 4 episode norms of these properties, presenting us with fat-free, fast-paced 2-episode tales. Further, said arcs are actually interlinked, with the effects of them do seem to carry into the characters' relatively active development and overarching stories. Additionally, this isn't a bad production, so without further babble, let's go through the spoiler-free segment, which on this occasion will be the whole review. Details and my thoughts on the general production quality. Music and animation. Music is an interesting one in 35th's case. Like with all of my reviews, I've been listening to 35th's OST separate of the show, and in its case, it's infinitely stronger as an accompaniment than as a standalone score. My general ratings depend not necessarily solely on the quality or my subjective enjoyment, but rather on how much the elements of a show fit together. With this in mind, during its runtime, the OST works perfectly. Its techno trappings and scattered tempos help to reinforce a sort of self-awareness the property has about the base-level absurdity of harem shows, which in turn gives the more laid-back, everyday tracks a feel of sincerity. Skippy Girl has become one of my favourites for attention, this is a fan service scene kind of tracks to date, for just how simply fun it is. Conversely, the OST happily supports the more action-packed scenes and has a couple of really emotive tracks for the sadder moments. So while I actually really dislike the score, when heard out of context, situationally, it always fits the occasion. Seldom if ever outstays its welcome, and is generally a great showing. All of that without mentioning the wonderful opening song and ending song. The animation is something I've seen vary from person to person. Those who are of the upper echelons of elitism will write off its entire visual presentation due to the mere inclusion of CGI. However, for those more reasonable among us, I think this is another strong showing. By no means top marks for the CGI, while noticeable, looks pretty decent and is generally reserved for mech-esque designs or suits, avoiding any jarring swaps between the 2D and 3D humans for the most part. The fights are far from outstanding, but they do a serviceable job, and the general animation is quite pleasing to look at. The slightly hard lines used for the characters and the vibrant array of colours gives the show a warm aesthetic befitting of this type of anime. The intro and outro animations are some of Silverlink's usual stylistic, simple but pleasing works, as also seen in Chivalry of a Fallen Knight to somewhat better effect. And all told, while by no means perfect, the animation is solid, as is the direction, which never quite becomes anything to gawk at, but equally never fails to be serviceable. The story and characters. As mentioned, 35 operates slightly at odds with most other harem genre stories. While it makes the sound choice to still have the characters relax and interact with one another within its short 12-episode span, it manages to give an arc to all of its primary cast through the use of the short 2-episode plots, while still having time for a nice break and change of pace for one episode near the end. Keeping spoiler-free, it should suffice to say the story constantly holds your attention. While sometimes formulaic and a little shallow at times, the ending in particular could be just a little bit tighter. It overall strikes a nice balance of being light-hearted entertainment it is, alongside a somewhat heartfelt set of fun fantasy sci-fi adventures, and one struggles to find much fault in it. At best, the story will surprise you with its direction and bluntness, and at worst you may roll your eyes at some of the more predictable elements. An above-average showing, to be sure, and very easy watching that you can happily dip in and out of over a period of weeks. The characters are what you'd expect from a mere one-course show. They have disguised, well-trodden traits in order to speed up characterization, and they each have some pick up or another to overcome. My apologies. Interestingly, unlike many harems, because the Anti-Magic Academy isn't a typical high school, but rather more like a pseudo-military institution, the way the girls interact with one another is far more endearing than is to be expected from this sort of content. They don't just squabble over the insert bland MC, but rather they each have personality quirks that bounce off one another and allow the group to form sort of miniature social cliques and partnerships. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it does help them all to feel more realistic than the usual archetypal fill-ins, and allows for some very effective shorthand characterization, as well as the platoon's format actually giving them a good reason to all hang out properly and work together rather than the spurned women's clubs of SAO or Infinite Stratus. Moreover, the protagonist, while relatively normal for your standard light novel harem adaptation, does actually have some scruples. He genuinely cares for his frequently mentioned younger sister, he's good to his word in some interesting ways, and generally a somewhat above average version of the character type we've all seen before. Good stuff, if a little unremarkable in places. Conclusion. 35th Test Academy is at its heart a very simple show with the aim of being base level entertainment for teenagers and young adults. A task it achieves to a decently high level of acclaim. It makes an effort to be more than meets the eye, understanding how to be compelling and even emotional when the situation calls for it. It admirably characterises its group of youths, making them far more memorable than many others in this genre. Its production values, and more importantly how those values come together, are all well above average. So should you give this one a watch? If you like this genre, or are simply looking for some nice light entertainment, then I think you'll find 35 to be a pleasantly adequate property, with enough to offer to be engaging and even a little wholesome, but never overly challenging. Afterword. Hi, if you've read any of my other work, or listened, you'll note that this one is shorter than my normal output. This is due to my wanting to write on a few shorter shows, but not to my usual level of detail. Furthermore, I want to work on a few longer essays, mainly pertaining to my recent decision to get back into Gundam, that essay you can read now, and my completion of Revolutionary Girl Uzhina, both of which I have a large deal to say on. As such, I'll be making these shorter reviews with the moniker SR, and the longer over 3000 ones with the tag LR. With that out of the way, I hope you enjoyed this particular look at a somewhat underrated anime. If you want to talk more on it, feel free to shoot a comment or press the like button below. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for reading.